I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, we won't be seeing this at Lindbergh Field again. Border Patrol saying it's stopping its airlift of refugees from Texas to San Diego.
And being a college freshman is scary enough, but even more so if you're a foster care teen. I'm Peggy Pico with a San Diego success story and the local program that's helping foster teens become college grads. But first, our in-depth look into public records access for the media and why it matters to you.
And San Diego skateboarders are getting 2 new spots to shred. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Border Patrol is changing strategy to deal with the flood of Central American families crossing into the U.S. illegally. No more flying them to the San Diego sector for processing. Our Fronteras reporter, Jill Replogle, joins us with the latest from the newsroom. Jill, another flight from Texas was scheduled to arrive today in San Diego, but now the Border Patrol says it's canceled these trips, right?
Right. Border Patrol spokesman Paul Card told the Associated Press that they've cut the backlog in South Texas, and so now they're able to process more migrants there.
Did the protest in Murrieta have anything to do with the change?
Carr says no. As you know, there's been strong opposition from residents up there to bringing these Central American families to their community. Last week, they were able to block 3 buses that were set to land at the local Border Patrol station there. And the debate seems to get more heated by the day over what to do with the more than 57,000 children and 39,000 adults with children that continue to show up at the South Texas border seeking to enter the U.S. But really, since the beginning, the federal government has been really guarded with information. Today's statement is about the most we've heard from the Border Patrol about its plans. And they've also been guarded about access to children and families staying in government shelters and detention centers. Just yesterday, the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection got grilled by Arizona Senator John McCain about instructions he was given not to speak with any children or staff at a shelter he visited in Nogales, Arizona.
Yeah, they are minors, and we need to be sensitive, of course, to their privacy. But it does seem like the government is trying to keep this from blowing up.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones. I spoke with a woman today from a private organization that's working with the government to handle this crisis. And she didn't want to speak publicly because of concerns for the children's safety. She said her organization had gotten some hateful phone calls and it just wasn't worth the risk. And other organizations working with the federal government at some of these shelters are under orders not to talk with any journalists.
The flights may be over for now, but the crisis continues. Fronteras reporter Jill Replogle. Congress is debating the president's request for $3.7 billion to help deal with the surge at the border. At a Senate hearing today, Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson said doing nothing is not an option.
ICE will run out of money in mid-August. Given the added transportation cost, given the added enforcement cost, Customs and Border Patrol will run out of money by mid-September.
The fact is that the failure to act does not save money for the taxpayer. What it essentially does is back up the ability of these children to be in a safe and secure surrounding. They will be primarily at the border.
We need to make it as clear as we can, as rapidly as we can, that what will happen to these children if they come to our country is they'll be treated with respect and humanely and sent home, taken home, as soon as we responsibly and safely can do it.
Now, over on the House side, Speaker John Boehner said he won't give the president a blank check for the crisis at the border.
Unfortunately, it's a crisis of the president's own making. His actions gave false hope to children and their families. If they enter the country illegally, they would be allowed to stay.
California lawmakers are also weighing in on the issue. San Diego Assemblywoman Lorena Gonzalez toured a temporary shelter for children in Ventura County this week, while Assemblyman Roger Dickinson says it's important for the legislators to remember these are mostly children.
This is a huge humanitarian issue. It again underscores the essential need for national comprehensive immigration reform. The Republican Congress has failed and refused to act on this, and it's deplorable. With respect to the children in particular, I think the most important part for us is to remember these are children. I mean, not just human beings, but a special kind of human being, a child. And so we need to react and respond in a humane way with regard to this particular crisis.
The Ventura facility is one of 3 short-term shelters on military grounds. The others are in Texas and Oklahoma. Now, caught in the middle of all the debate, the women and children making the journey north, the AP's John Moan talked with some of them on both sides of the border.
They arrived to a gracious welcome. In recent months, a flood of unaccompanied minors and mothers with their children have crossed the border illegally. Many turn themselves into U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, where they're released to await a hearing. And that's where volunteers at the Sacred Heart Catholic Church in the border city of McAllen step in. They give the migrants clothes, showers, and meals. A chance for a brief rest.
They fear for the lives of their children, and so the moms that we see here are saying that they rather risk the difficulties they will face along the way and what they're going through.
Most come from Central America, like Telma Carcamo and her infant son Adolfo, who made a month-long journey from Honduras. She says she came here to work and earn money, to take care of her son and to send back to her family. She hopes her next stop is New York, where her mother lives. Others here are traveling through the country, trying to reunite with family. Smugglers often tell these migrants to surrender to the Border Patrol, as they'll eventually be released and allowed to go to their destination. For the many who make it across the river, there are also countless numbers of people and children stranded in Mexican border towns.
Pues agarramos un bus y llegamos.
This 13-year-old girl, who Mexican authorities asked us not to identify, made it as far as Reynosa, Mexico, before authorities raided a warehouse that smugglers controlled, taking her and her sister. The Mexican Integral Family Development Agency's shelters are overflowing.
Estamos hablando de un 40.
The man in charge of the shelter says the number of children from Central America being processed at the facility has gone up 40 to 60% in comparison with last year. The teens often tell the same story. They're fleeing to reunite with parents and escaping gangs threatening them back home. John Moan, Associated Press, McAllen, Texas.
A Marine veteran remains in custody in Mexico tonight after a 9-hour hearing in Tijuana yesterday. Andrew Tamaresi was arrested in March for bringing guns across the border. He says the crossing was a mistake. A judge heard from Tamaresi and 2 Mexican officers before ordering him back to jail. His attorney says he wasn't surprised by the order. The next hearing is set for August 4th. Disability advocates filed a Voting Rights Act complaint in Los Angeles today on behalf of thousands of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The complaint says LA courts are violating the act by using a literacy test to determine if some developmentally disabled people should be able to vote. The complaint asks for a review of voting eligibility in LA County. Registrars in Kern and Imperial counties are starting a recount tomorrow. Former Assembly Speaker John Perez requested the recount in 15 counties after finishing third in the state controller's race. It is the first recount in a statewide candidate election in recent history. They could be counting the ballots for 2 weeks or longer, and Perez has to pay for the cost. The Obama administration has given California until Monday to submit plans to reduce a massive backlog of folks waiting for Medi-Cal coverage. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg joins us from the newsroom. Kenny, how large of a backlog are we talking about here?
Well, Dwayne, right now about 600,000 Californians are waiting for the state to process their Medi-Cal applications. Now, that's certainly a big number, but it was up to 900,000 just a few months ago. So state officials say they're making progress.
And how did things get so backed up in the first place?
The state officials say since Obamacare was introduced last fall, they've been inundated with requests for Medi-Cal coverage. That's because California has expanded eligibility for the program. In other words, the state has allowed more people to qualify for the free coverage. Applications are supposed to be processed within 45 days, but officials say the sheer volume of requests has just overloaded the systems.
And Kenny, what's the state doing about this overload?
Medi-Cal officials say they're doing all they can to process applications. Now, officials point out that more than half of the applicants have been waiting less than 45 days. And they say the backlog of 600,000 people isn't static. People are being approved every day, and more applications keep pouring in. In fact, since the end of March, more than 800,000 people have been approved for Medi-Cal.
And what do you think the state will tell the federal government about resolving this backlog once and for all?
State officials aren't giving any specifics, but they say they'll submit their plan to the feds by Monday.
KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg. Today, House Republicans took their first step to sue the president over the employer mandate of the health care reform law. In a draft resolution, they say the president changed the law without a congressional vote by waiving the mandate in 2013 and giving employers another year to offer coverage. The White House says the suit is a stunt. Well, it took several weeks and multiple public records requests from KPBS and others to get District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis to release a controversial letter. Peggy Pico takes a closer look at the issue of government transparency.
Dumanis says she does not believe the college letter of recommendation she wrote on department letterhead is a public document. Her letter was for the son of a Mexican national accused of making illegal campaign contributions to Dumanis' 2012 mayoral campaign. Here to explain what a public document is or is not and why access is important to the public are media attorney Guylen Cummins and Scott Lewis, CEO of Voice of San Diego. Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
Guylen, how does California law define a public record?
They actually define it exceedingly broadly, and that's any writing that's in the possession of the public entity that's owned or used or retained by them in any manner. And they further said in the legislative history, it's only really purely personal things that you can withhold or things that are exempt by statutory mandate.
And that was my next question, if you could give us an example of what an exempt public record is for a public official.
Yes, for example, if you're a personal or a public employee, your medical records would be personnel exempt. They might be in your personnel file, but they're exempt from disclosure to the public.
I see. Now, you represented KPBS and several other local media organizations in fighting to make the Dumanis letter public. Why is this recommendation a matter of public interest?
Well, I think it's a public record, which is why I was willing to go after it on behalf of the news organizations. So it essentially bears on campaign contributions that benefited Bonnie Dumanis. There have been federal charges that have been brought against various people associated with those campaign contributions. And I think it's an important issue for the public to see when someone holds themselves out as the district attorney and makes a recommendation on official stationery, you know, why they're doing that, what the association is, what they said about the person. All of that's important.
And Scott, Dumanis released the letter, but she said, of course, not because she agreed it was a public document. She said instead, listen, these requests and this letter has become a distraction. Why should the public care about this letter and, in general, public records access for the media?
Well, there were a lot of concerns about what's going on with this guy who is alleged to have given several $100,000 to local campaigns. And so the big questions we have is, why did he do that? Why did he want to spend so much money on San Diego politics? And then the second question is, what about Bonnie Dumanis did he want to support so much if he was willing to take these risks, even risk of jail? And I think that we all have been pursuing that. We've been polling it at ideas and at angles, and this was one of the angles. Why did she want to write a recommendation? She's now admitted that she did not know this person, that she was willing to give her word to stand behind, that this is a guy that will be energetic, a well-rounded individual. She doesn't know the person. And so there's a lot of things that we learned from this letter. Also, that it was written by the man who has pleaded guilty to funneling this money into San Diego politics illegally, and that it was written by him and prepared by him, and that she simply added her name to it. And so why is it public? It's because she used the influence of her office, the letterhead of her office, to make the point. She can write letters personally all she wants.
You know, Dumanis blocked the public access request, I believe, at first. What other barriers do you think, Scott, do media organizations face when it comes to getting access to public records?
Well, as Guylen said, the Public Records Act Act is very broad. It includes a lot of things, but it doesn't have enforcement. And so, unfortunately, we can make a great case if we want through letters, but unless if they turn us down, we have to turn to people like Guylen to take them to court.
And Guylen, do you find that politicians are increasingly trying to get around complying with public records requests from the media?
I think that there are kind of two kinds of politicians. Those who understand that they're conducting public business and transparency is the #1 key for their constituents, and those that feel like it's really more their office and they have the right to run it as they see fit.
Do you think, I guess I'll ask both of you this, and I'll start with you, Guylan. What's being done to make government more transparent? If public access isn't as easy as it used to be, what's being done to make it more transparent?
Well, I think we're trying. I mean, a few years ago, we passed California Proposition 59, and that made the right of access a constitutional right. So it now carries constitutional weight. So that should have strengthened it. We do have some penalties in the California Public Records Act. For example, if you withhold a letter wrongly, you can be forced to pay the attorney fees and costs of the other side. So there are a few things like that. The problem becomes, you know, if somebody doesn't want to turn something over, they're willing to fight for it. I think Scott's right. Our avenues are limited.
Okay, and just quickly, if we could end with you, do you think that there are ways that are improving things for media access to public records?
Yeah, we have tremendous technological opportunities these days that they can make a lot of these documents proactively open to the public so that we can access them with a machine without having to bug the people who don't want to help us.
All right, Scott Lewis and Guylan Cummins, thank you very much.
Thank you.
California's drought picture is looking more grim by the week. The latest map seen here shows San Diego in extreme drought, and a huge portion of the state is in exceptional drought. Severe drought is as good as it gets for California. Next week, the state's water managers will consider mandatory restrictions, including fines of up to $500 a day for wasting water outdoors. Governor Brown's asked folks to voluntarily conserve water by 20%, but a recent report says we've cut our water use by only 5%. Remember the family rescued from their disabled sailboat in the Pacific a few months ago? They filed suit against the maker of their satellite phone. Eric and Charlotte Kaufman say the phone failed in the middle of the ocean when they were trying to get a doctor's help for their sick baby. Their lawyer wants the phone company to pick up the tab for the family's military rescue, as well as the loss of their boat. Freshman year can be challenging for any college student, so you can imagine how much harder it might be for kids who've spent their whole lives in foster care. Peggy Pico takes a look at programs to help kids aging out of the system get into and stay in college.
About 6,500 foster children live in San Diego County. Many of these kids spent years moving from home to home and school to school. Each year, about 300 foster teens in the county are pushed out of the system when they turn 18, when many high school grads are headed to college. Nationwide, only 10% of foster youth attend college. Here to talk about local programs working to improve the odds are my guests, former foster kid and now college graduate Melissa Gutierrez and Dawn Wells, Executive Director with Just in Time, a program offering assistance to foster teens and children. Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi. Hi. Dawn, what are some of the key challenges a teen faces when they're moving from the foster care system into college?
Well, you talked about 10% going to college. Only 1 to 3% graduate. That's the national statistic. And that's improving somewhat because now foster youth are getting more resources. 10 years ago, there was very little. They wouldn't even have housing when school was out, so to get the summer, and they would be told to leave and find a place to live during the summer. So people have addressed some of those things. So housing has been an issue. Having financial resources. A lot of the young people that we work with, they would get a scholarship. They would manage to get a scholarship even though they'd been moved around so much. But they would go into school with no laptop, no printer, no dorm supplies, no school supplies. School would be starting, but their financial aid was coming 2 months later, and so they didn't have books to start with. So there was a lot of resource issues, but the biggest thing really is a lack of connection. To come onto a college campus for the first time, to be the first person in your family to come there, and to have no one there who's rooting for you, no one who's saying that we know this is difficult, but you can make it, nobody to call if a problem comes up. That's really, I think, the biggest challenge for foster youth.
You actually have a program called College Bound within this. What does that program do to help?
Well, College Bound started in 2006, and it was really to fill in those resource gaps so that you did have a laptop and printer, so you could compete. So when you went into your dorm room, you didn't feel like I don't belong here. But over the course of time, what we found was that getting those resources was fine, but having a connection to people was really more important. So we have lots of volunteers who provide that kind of support.
And we'll talk a little bit about that because, Melissa, you were in and out of foster care, I understand, since a very early age. What were some of the specific barriers that you felt you faced? You're 18, you want to go to college. What were some specifics that you had to deal with?
I know that one thing that stands out in my mind is the sense of not knowing, of having no previous experience really to fall back on, because again, my biological family had not graduated college, they had not had that experience, and coming out into the world feeling very unsure, feeling hesitant, having a lot of emotional baggage and many distinct issues that come with the challenges of foster care and being moved around so much, it instills this sense of unsureness and just not knowing what's going to be happening. And so I came in feeling very excited, but also anxious and nervous about my performance, about being able to succeed, and about being able to get those resources that I would need to be able to succeed.
And what helped you either relate to other students or overcome not relating to other students going through your college career?
I think, to speak to what Don was saying, it really is about those formal emotional connections. And I was lucky enough to have a supportive system of an adopted family, and just in time with someone I was in coordination with, along with Josephine Mojica from the Guardian Scholars Program at State. But the real initiative of these programs was to provide a safe support network, a fallback, somewhere to be able to say it's okay to feel unsure and to ask questions and to have doubts and for things to go wrong, because the idea is that you fall but you get back up with some support.
Right, as most college students do, but their support might be a little more readily accessed. Dawn, what kind of follow-up and what kind of support does College Bound offer for college students throughout the term of their studies?
Well, again, we serve youth from 18 to 26. So a lot of programs go 18 to 21. Some then went to 24. And we feel that going into the age of 26 is really important, because you really need to be with the young person throughout that whole time. A lot of what we were talking about in terms of getting trust, that takes a while to establish, and it takes expanding that network over time. So you might start out the first year, you have 2 people you can rely on, then 4, and then 6, and then 8. We had a young woman who went to UCLA, and she came to one of our programs, and she said she had 8 distinct volunteers that she had connected to over that time. She talked about what she got from each one of those individuals.
Sounds helpful. Now, Melissa, you've graduated from SDSU this year, and you're looking into going into a master's program. What do you want to tell other foster kids about going to college?
That it's possible. That I think that even though I know that I'm very familiar with the statistics, everyone's goal should be to not become that statistic, and that there are so many different programs and resources available in your area, even around you, and to just take advantage of those and really never limit yourself by what someone has told you, by what you've told yourself. I know there was a period where I thought, well, I don't know if this is right. I don't know if I can do this. And there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of self-talk that needs to be cut out, and just you need to look to the future.
Well, you did it. So congratulations, Melissa Gutierrez and Don Wells. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, the latest on the escalating violence in the Middle East. That's Thursday on the PBS NewsHour.
Skateboarders one day will be able to get off the streets and back alleys in Linda Vista and City Heights. Today, those 2 communities got nearly $4.5 million to build 2 custom skate parks, something youth in the area have rallied to get for years. Councilwoman Marty Emerald says the new parks will help keep youngsters safe.
The City Heights young people, Mid-City Can, the Community Action Network, came to our office with their skateboards under their arms. They were like a small army, and they said, we need a skate park. And they did. They do, because these kids otherwise are skating in the streets, in alleys, up and down driveways. They're not safe in those environments.
Part of the funding comes from the Tony Hawk Foundation, established by San Diego's most famous skateboarder. The money comes with a deadline, though. The new parks have to be ready for shredding in 2 years. The city is taking public input on designs and park improvements. A final decision on the host city for the America's Cup is still months away, but the Port of San Diego is already getting ready, putting together an ad hoc committee to work on the city's bid for the 2017 race. If San Diego does get the event, the races will be held on San Diego Bay instead of off Point Loma like before. Bermuda is now the only other candidate. A final decision is expected by the end of the year. The Weather Service says to expect some big waves tonight. High tide could top 7 feet this evening. Some beach parking lots could get flooded. Now for tomorrow along the coast, look for the usual morning clouds, then sunshine by afternoon. Temperatures mostly in the 80s, as you can see there. For the inland valleys, We're talking low to mid 80s with increasing humidity. It'll be sticky right through the weekend. Mountain temperatures in the mid 80s tomorrow, but by Sunday afternoon, there's a slight chance of showers and thunderstorms. Sunny in the desert with temperatures well above 100 degrees. Look at that, 110 by Sunday. Let's do a recap of our top stories tonight. Border Patrol says it is not sending any more refugees from Central America to the San Diego sector. The flight sparked big protests at the Border Patrol station in Murrieta. It was supposed to process folks from those flights. Border Patrol says the protests have nothing to do with the decision. The agency says it's been able to cut the backlog of people fleeing to South Texas so it can process more migrants there. Some 57,000 children have come to the border since October. Congress is looking at a request for more than $3 billion to handle the surge. Of course, you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.